did not have, well, we haven't gone to bid or things like that. So we have gone through the bidding process. We're now to a point where Big D is comfortable with a number for us to consider for that. And let's pull this information up. And I'm going to go over a few numbers. We do have Big D here, and we also have our architect, JRCA, Chris Childs, representing them. As far as what's going to be presented tonight will be budget information, which I will go over, the construction schedule, which Big D will go over, and then if there's any questions that the City Council has. We also have Dave Holdaway here, who is our citizen representative on the committee. So if you have any questions for any of that group, you'll have an opportunity to do that. So let me start with our executive summary on the guaranteed maximum price budget. Marty got us a new display adapter, so we are thinking of big things here in our way to present information. As we have settled on the guaranteed maximum price, this is the breakdown of what that price is. And as I go over these numbers, I'm going to pull up a different budget worksheet in just a minute, and I'm going to show where those numbers tie back into our overall budget. As you can see here, the first number is really what we call our sticks and bricks, which is the construction costs at $10,300,000. We also have our general conditions, which is right here. This is just for the contractor for Big D. And then we have kind of some, not necessarily odds and ends, but just particular things in relation to this project. So we have a liability insurance. We have a builder's risk. That's if something happens before the buildings are actually built. We pay for insurance for that. We do have a weather allowance for $125,000, which at least for this winter, we have not spent a whole lot out of that. Maybe 10 or 15,000, somewhere along those lines, maybe a little bit more. We don't anticipate we're going to use all of that. We are still going to keep it in the budget with an understanding that when we get into next winter, when we're finishing up with particularly our police and courts building, we might still need some of that money for particular weather conditions. For instance, if we have snowstorms that are early in November, could affect some of that. And then we also have the demolition of our existing buildings. Initially, the city was going to contract and do all that, and we found out quickly we were a little bit over our heads on that, so we asked Big D to do it for us. So they've put that into the price, which settles in for our guaranteed maximum price of $11,953,670. What that means for our overall budget let me talk about the expense side while we're there. So on the expense side, we have $130,000. That's our allowance for the relocation of the fire department and community development. We are now paying rent for both of those departments to function in other buildings. That number right now is probably going to be a little bit low because we were hoping initially when we started the project that we'd have the fire department out by September or October, and that's probably going to push now into December, January. So we will, as we continue to go through this budget, we'll make small amendments. The demolition cost is right here. That's an actual because that is something, our initial allowance was $150,000 and we got it done for just below that. And then this goes back to the numbers that I was showing you, which was the sticks and bricks, the general conditions, and then the insurance allowances and the contractor fee and contingency. So so this 1106, when you add that with the 147,670, that gives us our guaranteed maximum price of $11.9 million. So what At this point, I just want to talk about contingency. So the contractor, because now they have to bring the project in at that price or lower, they do carry a little bit of a contingency in there, and that's for things that could happen out there that are unforeseen. We also carry an owner's contingency of just under $600,000, and that owner's contingency is if their scope changes. So the building starts going up, and we're like, well, wait a second, that wall can't be there. Now that we are able to walk through a little bit, we need to move that wall. Then we have money set aside that if there's some changes like that, that we can account for that. Ideally, if everything goes really well, we're not going to need to spend all that contingency money. As we get into the overall funding mechanism, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, where we'll talk about how that contingency could come into play for a few things. So we do have our contractor fee, our FF&E, so furnishings, fixture, and equipment, which is just a 3% number, about $350,000. That's how we'll furnish the building. We also pay a design fee. We have somebody that comes in and helps us choose what types of chairs and tables and things so that we have a coordinated effort and it looks nice so that it's not a hodgepodge of what we're trying to do. And then we have our geotechnical allowance, our site survey, which is completed, so that's a fixed number. And then we have our construction testing, so soils and things are tested as they go along, and we pay that as we go. So those are the costs that go on top of our guaranteed maximum price. So our overall project cost right now is $13,756,526. All right, so how are we going to pay for that? We have a general obligation bond of $9.3 million. We have impact fees of just under $1 million. We have property that was paid, that was bought with impact fees, public safety impact fees 10 years ago that we have for sale. We currently have this property under contract. The developer will be presenting a proposal to you as a city council on what they want to do with that property. If the city council approves that, then we will sell the property and have that money in the bank. If the city council doesn't care for the project and we don't do it, then that land will go back onto the market. So if that is not sold by, probably by the end of this year, then we will probably have to have the general fund reserve account buy that. And then as soon as we sell that property, we'll reimburse the general fund account. And so we do have the cash available to do that. It will be the movement of money because we will need that cash eventually for the completion of the building. And then when we initially did this and put this together, as you see back in October, we were looking at current city funds, what we could use, and the number I came up with was about $400,000. And I'm going to show you where that number came from here in just a minute. And then we have donations confirmed at just under $2 million. Most of this, a large majority of that, has been collected and is in the bank. So that's good news that we have that cash on hand. The mayor sent a letter to our residents a few weeks ago. We've also put this out online that we are seeking donations from the public. That if anybody donates at least $100, that they'll have an opportunity to have their name on a donor wall in some manner in our new building. So a way to recognize those. We have had people that have donated $100 or more that have asked to be anonymous, which is fine. That's great. But just a few hours ago, we've had, just in the last couple of weeks, just over $3,000 in donations through that mechanism. So we're going to keep promoting that for the next few months. Even though the project is going forward and we're building it, if we do not make up our budget deficit with donations, any dollar we can get via donations is just helpful towards the overall tax impact. And so we're gonna work through that. So right now, when you look at how much revenue we have and what our costs now, which are more or less locked in, we're at our funding gap is about $570,000. So, show you how we're going to account for that. So initially, we had a current commitment of $400,000. I showed you on the revenue side, and then we have our funding gap of $570,000. When we initially talked about this $400,000, there were a couple things that we knew that were on the table that we could consider. Number one is that we had actually $150,000 set aside to put the elevator in here at the library of capital money. When St. John Properties said that they would be able to do that for us, that saved us that $150,000. Now, I don't put the 150 here because I'm still holding on to 50 in case there is a cost overrun when we're all said and done. But we feel very confident that at least $100,000 is now available to the building that wouldn't have been but for St. John Properties doing that. So we're grateful for them. That was helpful for our budget. We also, in the past, have carried a general fund balance. So our general fund balance is our reserve account. It's where our additional money goes that really is unencumbered and is a rainy day fund or whatever name you want to use for it. We've always carried about $2.3 million in there, and over the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of money that's been added to it. And so when Denise and I were looking at that, we have about $2.43 million in there, and we said, well, let's pull out 130 of that, put it back into the building, and we'll still be at our $2.3 million, which financially we feel comfortable with as staff, but again makes money available for the project. And then we have our capital money from our budget that was completed in fiscal year 17. We have $475,000 of revenue over expenditure. Normally we turn around and put that into capital projects, spread it out through the various departments and needs in the city. We're recommending that of that 475, we take 400 of it and put it towards the building. Now we're going to talk budget a little bit later, and Denise is going to show you where the 400's accounted for, and then the additional 75, and what we're recommending to the City Council with that. And then we have, since we bonded and had that money in the bank as of last year, we've got about $100,000 of interest off of that. So that's money we'll turn around and put back into the project. So when you add all these up and subtract out the 400 that we initially committed to, we have $330,000 to go towards our 570. So we got the 330 here, that's our carryover. And this is, if we don't have any cost overruns on the elevator, this money will now become available. And then we have the weather conditions, $125,000. I'm estimating that we'll have at least $50,000 of that available that we won't spend. So that, again, will go back into the budget. Hopefully more, but I want to be conservative on that, which leaves us a funding gap of $140,000 at this point in time. Now, donations, I have not put a number in here, so that any donations we gather over the spring and summer, those will be, I'll put that in here, and that will continue to reduce this number. And then the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 18, which ends at the end of June, we're anticipating another $300,000 or $400,000 available of capital money, and if we need to use that, we can to make up that final budget gap. So I think financially we'll be able to accomplish what we need. Our costs are more or less locked in. Again, because we have a $590,000 contingency as a city, we're hoping that's going to take care of what we need to do. Potentially, if it becomes available, then it could again go towards our funding gap. We're not counting on that now because we just barely started building the building and we don't know where our contingencies are going to lie. So there are three items that we have alternate bids on. That right now are not built into this budget nor accounted for in this funding gap. And that is the security fence that would go around the parking between the police and fire stations. The parking lot would be built, but right now we don't have it funded to put a security fence around it. And then we've talked about a west access for fire trucks coming off of 200 South, west of the building. That would be really a second access, which would make it easier for the truck to come in, pull in, and then just turn around and make a right turn right into the bays. And so when we talked early on about the development of this project, that was one of the things that came up that would be nice to have. Is it critical to open the building? It's not, but that would be a nice thing to have if the money were available. So we bid that, and we have that number. And then we have the park restroom, which would be attached to the police and courts building. It would be it would be attached to the building, but there would not be access from the restroom into the building. It would really just be a new park restroom. If you've been in our old park restroom, it's in rough shape. So this would be, it would be nice to have the new park restroom in there. And I pulled that, where's Ben? Is that 80,000? Was that our actual bid number at this point, or are we still?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're still obtaining.
Okay, so that was an allowance that they put together. That number could go up or down slightly based on the bids. So we have $210,000 of alternate items that if the city council says we want those to be a part of it, then we're probably using more of this money that we're going to have available next fall in order to do that. So that's the budget side of it. And before we get into the scheduling side, do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, and this is probably due to Denise, so why are we not, the rainy day fund, right? We currently have how much sitting in there?
We have about 2.3.
Mm-hmm.
3 million.
So my question is just a question, why don't we, I mean, we're obligated to have a certain amount, percentage in there, right? And
The lowest we can go is 5%.
we're at what percent?
We were at like 16.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, if we're going to do this, why don't we do it right? Why don't we look at using a little bit more and taking care of some of these things in the first place?
So there's two ways to do that in my mind. One is if we want to fund these alternate items, we might be able to do this without using any of the general fund balance and just take it out of our capital money for next year. The downside of that is there's going to be some needs in other departments that some we've put off this year because we're putting $400,000 towards the building. And then if we take a majority of that money next year. So I would recommend that if we're going to consider using our fund balance, that the council can say, all right, Scott, make these happen, put this in the budget. Let's see where we're at, and we'll know probably November, about the time our audit gets done, we'll know what this number is. And then the city council can say either we're going to use a majority of that or we're going to dip into the fund balance. I don't think we have to decide that today, other than if we're going to do these items, I think we need to have I think the restroom for sure, if we're going to do that, we need to know because we got the concrete guys out there needing to do the footings and foundations.
So Denise, you said 5% is required. Is that a state law?
State law.
For general fund, yeah, you can't go.
And we're at
Budgeted revenues.
16 right now.
I was just pulling up the city audit. I think we're at like 16.2. around there.
And what is that dollar amount between 5 and 16? Do we?
Well, 5% would be
5%, yeah, 5%.
750,000 would probably be
We're
the.
at like 2.3.
2.3,
yeah.
so there's some,
Estimate, so.
okay.
And just the caution as staff, when we start talking about spending general fund, we just have to keep in mind our general fund balance when we had the downturn of the economy in 2010 and 11 was what was able to get us through those rough years. And in my mind, that's the purpose of a rainy day fund when you see the dip in revenues. And so to commit a lot of that money, I would say that would be our last resort. So I would recommend that, and again, we don't have to decide this tonight, but let's look at what this number is going to be first, and we'll know that by November. And if that number doesn't get us there, or if there are other things that we want to fund, then let's have the discussion about using the general fund balance. But really, I mean, it's a complete policy call on the city council's place position to say, we're okay to use 200 of that, or 150, or 100, or whatever. I'm just saying there might be other funding ways we can do it first before we need to worry about that.
I just remember we sat through all the PSP meetings, and we knew that it was pretty close to last year's bond, right? And looking at the numbers, we're pretty much right there. And I just remember you're going to get your $12.6 million billing for $11 million, right? And I just think we need to hold true to some of that and say, yeah, I don't feel comfortable using all the revenue of, for 18. I just think there's got to be a compromise in there that we use some of the rainy day fund and some others. So.
And that's great. I mean, that's what we're going to need to get us there. Because part of the discussion is we probably need to get a feel. I know that the mayor represented in our meetings that the park restroom was something that we absolutely wanted to have. And so if that's the case, the security fence we could probably wait a little bit on, I think. Or do we need to know that one right away? And probably the west access too, but I think the park restroom, if we're going to say we want that, then we need to let them know.
What happened to the audio visual? Because that used to be in there too. Has that been taken care of?
So the audio, it's been stripped out, the audio visual. There is a minimum audio visual in there, but not I think what we were hoping to do. Now we're having another sit down with, now that we have an audio visual person under contract, we're going to sit down with them and we're going to go over what is included and what's not, so that we have an understanding of if we need another $100,000 worth of AV stuff, then we'll be able to, we'll bring this back. I mean, we're getting pretty close, but we're not all the way locked in on every single number. So there still could be a little bit of a fluctuation there.
I think the audio visual is important. I think we need a line item for that so that we understand what that override could be.
Yeah.
Because audio visual, we've seen the problems that we've had,
Yeah.
both in the other building and here.
Yep.
And I think it's important that we understand what those costs are.
Yep. And so, yeah.
Because I think we're committed to doing that for the public.
Yeah,
So the
and-
public can have access to these meetings.
Yeah, so we're working on that
Yeah.
right now. We don't have the number today.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we'll have a number for you
Cool.
on the AV.
But you're going to get that, and if needed, that will be a line item that we may need to address with additional funding.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
So just so I know, because I've talked, where is the council on the alternate items? What do you think?
Well,
Is that Mayor?
On the alternate items, the security fence, what's that? I mean, should we just say, hey, let's just plan on doing them?
Agreed.
Unless something really
The-
goes haywire, or?
The west access is the one I've had a concern about, and I've already expressed this in a previous meeting, and I just don't know how that can get resolved. I just feel nervous about having a playground by where the truck is pulling in and out. And I don't know how that can be addressed.
Well, the way it can be addressed is that the playground doesn't necessarily have to go right there.
But where else would it go at this point?
I don't know, we can put it somewhere else in the park.
So Scott, let me make sure that I understand. This isn't
You might be new to
necessarily.
this one.
What's that?
You might be new to this one. You might not have been when we initially talked about this. I don't know if you were on the
Okay,
council.
so are we talking about west access to Main Street? Or are we talking,
200 south.
that'd be west of the building, though?
Yeah, there'll be a.
So it's the south entrance.
Aligning with, running perpendicular with,
Yeah, and there'd be a fence.
no.
There would be, what do we talk about, bollards or something? There'd be bollards along
I
that.
don't know what that
so
is.
Concrete posts.
Oh.
So not a fence per se. To Sid's point, if a kid was playing in that area and the fire truck was pulling in, there's not a fence that's going to keep him out. There would be bollards there to keep the truck or whatever from
Veering.
veering that way.
See if,
Yeah, I think we need to talk about that.
see if we don't do that, we only have one access, and it's off First East.
Uh-huh.
In and out for the PD and the fire department.
The landscaping
Well,
is happening.
I just don't want to say yes to it unless we have a plan for the playground, and then we get in there and decide that it's a huge safety issue. So I'd rather discuss it and get it figured out now. I mean, I would love for them to have a second access, but we've guaranteed people that we're going to keep the playground. Now, whether that moves around, that's fine.
Yeah.
If we can figure that out, but we've guaranteed them the playground, and I want to make sure it's safe because it's a big truck, and if you have kids playing and mom's not watching for a minute, the kids could run over and be curious by the truck, and I think it's a safety concern. So I want them to have that access, but I want it to be safe, and the safety's my first priority. But I want to get it figured out before we go any further, so we don't get down the road and then figure out that one or the other, the playground can't be done, or the safety can't be addressed, or something like that.
Or that it encroaches onto the park, which we don't want either.
Well, so
It
it,
won't encroach on the
It's,
park.
Yeah.
it's the same property line, it's always been.
yeah, well, and there's a detention basin that's going in, that's going to be landscaped and part of the park.
Right.
Which is going in to accommodate the building. And so the green space is going to be there. I think we're going to have in essence, the same green space that we had before. But when we're talking about the horseshoe pits, and do we want to put those back in, or do we just want to maybe put the playground equipment there, or, and that part of that is where the bathroom's going to go. So
I'm sure there's got to be a
with the west
compromise, right?
access, I don't think tonight we need to decide on west access. That one, I think we can hold off for a little bit. Am I okay? Or do we need to know as far as?
I want this, that's probably the most.
So we have the experts here, we could do a mixture of both, right? Fence and the barriers, right? Right? Just to alleviate that
Well, we can put-
situation.
Yeah, we can put a fence in. Right now, it's not budgeted for a fence.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would change the
But the
cost.
security fence, so the security fence you have up there, and the west access for fire trucks, the security fence is just for First East, right?
The security fence is for the parking. So that fence it will be in between the
In between the
buildings, but
buildings.
it will be along First East, but also along the park. There'll be a security fence there.
That to me is huge priority, is security fence and the restrooms. I'd love to figure out a way for the access for the fire trucks. So Chief, this is nothing against your department. Security fence is a huge issue for me, because if that's open, and again, you have kids playing, people coming in and out of the park, and then you have all the police vehicles, equipment, dispatchers walking in and out at night, officers, that to me is a huge safety issue as well. I'd love to find the access away for that, as long as we can keep the kids safe.
Sure.
And
So-
keep the park.
Just so we can kind of move forward, if the council's okay, we'll put the security fence and the restroom into the budget. We have a meeting this Thursday with our owners committee. We'll talk about that access and what it means.
Scott, I can explain the reason we're talking about a west access. It's not just a convenience. At 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the evening, that road is booked up, and we can't turn off of it or turn onto it. And so we wanted to be able to come in from that west side in order to get back to the station without having to jam up all the traffic that's there. If it ends up being kind of a safety issue for us too, in order to get on and off that road when it's super busy like that.
I mean, I totally understand the need. I just want to make sure it's safe for people in the park.
Roger that.
Because, yeah, so I totally, if we, any way we can make it work, I don't know how that is, but I mean, I'll let you guys, because
Yeah,
you're
it's
the
a
professionals.
safety issue for us too, and so that's why we requested it, because it's a real issue for us to be able to get on and off that road.
Well, I guess in my mind, and we'll talk Thursday, but if we just put a fence up there,
Yeah.
I think it solves that problem, and we just
Great.
need to figure out
Great.
what that fence is going to be.
I'm good with that. Done.
What are your thoughts?
Well, excuse me. Well, I think we need to include all the alternate items. Hopefully, at the end, we can get those. So really, the restrooms, I think we've all agreed on that. The security fence and that roadway, we just need to work on that and probably get you the design and see how we can make it safe. So is that good?
I think the roadway's been designed. I think the question now is just putting a fence on there. But
Well, I just think that if we commit to them now, also while the construction is happening, I can't imagine that mobilization and materials already being there, that the price isn't gonna, I mean, are these hard numbers or are they,
So the first two those are bid numbers.
okay?
The
Oh,
park
I see.
restroom right now, we're still finalizing the bid on that.
What is that noise? Do we know?
Don't know what that noise is.
Who's touching a microphone? Everyone put your hands in the air.
It's about Mike 5.
Mike 5?
I'm 11.
I'm
12.
8.
I'm 9.
Marty?
But that's muted.
He was shooting.
Marty, will you just turn that mic off? Just turn that off.
I love that you could just pinpoint.
Again, line for AV.
Right there.
Point taken, right? Audio visual in the new building.
Point taken.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like Big D just to talk schedule real quick. We do have one other item that's pretty critical we get to in the work session, so I'll turn it over to them.
Hey, I'm Clint Fackrell. I'm the project manager. I'm the guy that will directly interface between you guys and all of our subcontractors. Jared, superintendent, he will build your buildings, and he'll yell at me quite a bit. So if I'm not sweeping the floors. We show our schedule starting January 2nd of this year, which we were pretty close. We were within a couple days. We've been pushing our subs really hard. We're looking at completion, final completion, March 8th of 2019. Now, final completion and substantial completion are very different, just so I can explain this to you a little bit. Substantial completion to us is we've walked the building with you. We have a C of O. You can use it for its intended purposes. There may still be some items that we are taking care of. Finishes, maybe some acoustical panels, something that is not a life safety issue. Currently, we're on target to hit December 6th for completion of the fire station. So that's good news. We had tentatively planned originally January 7th. We have a 30-day window there that we can finish some of those items that need to be done that you guys may see and say, hey, this needs to be changed a little bit. Punch list items, any holes in the walls that your furniture guys put in, stuff like that. The Justice Building is set for approximately 30 days after that at January 14th of 19. Having those buildings completed on time is our #1 priority. Second priority is making sure you get the building you want. So that's why you're discussing what you are. Are there any questions you guys have on schedule right now?
Or on anything in general regarding the building?
With the building. No, but I just want to make sure that all the council looks at the mock wall or the brick wall that we've got out there so they can,
We can walk over and take a look.
Absolutely.
Mayor, where's that at? It's in,
How long ago was that washed?
It's directly south of my little office trailer there.
oh, okay.
It's just, you can't miss it, just a red brick wall standing in the middle.
Right now it's in one of the bay doors, correct, for the fire
Yeah, it's
station?
right in the middle of one of the bay doors.
We just don't want someone to tackle us when we walk in there.
No, you're totally okay. If you guys want to go over and look at it, no problem.
I told you, I'll give you a tour after hours.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? We do have the architect here too, if there's anything the council would like to ask.
Good.
Okay, with that, that's all we have on the building. So in our council meeting, we will be taking action to amend the contract to add the guaranteed maximum price and the building budget as far as the first sheet I showed you, the exhibit that comes with that. So there's 2 exhibits that we'll be doing. So we would just want to make sure that we got that in front of you so that these guys didn't have to stay all night. So I think we're good. Thank you. I don't know, do you have any questions for Dave? I know Dave's representing our owners committee.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is something we talked about in our last meeting regarding the downtown village zone, the commercial subdistrict and the transitional subdistrict. Daniel is going to give us a look and a follow-up with some of the inquiries that the City Council had regarding this. So he's going to talk about these and show what the uses are that are allowed in that zone, and then we'll take direction from the City Council on how you'd like to proceed.
Daniel.
Probably need me to disconnect, right? Yep.
in practice.
Wow. Mike 5?
Let's wait to make sure it won't disconnect me, and then we'll celebrate. Let's see.
I'm going to have fun with that all year.
No, I'm okay. Just for right now, I'm okay. Mayor, council, by this time, I'm pretty sure we're getting to be experts on the downtown and what's going on with rezoning in the downtown. So, Mayor, council, right now, we have one zone. Let's not get confused with sub-districts and zone. We have one zone in it's called the Downtown Village Zone. Within that zone, we have two different sub-districts. We have our commercial sub-district or transitional sub-district. Okay, here's a very interesting map, a very interesting image that I was taking a look at it, and this is what's in the back is our general plan. Okay, so that's land use designations for our general plan. Now the zoning map is a little more comes from the general plan, right? So one thing that it was very interesting to me is that our downtown village zone occupies 3 different land use designations. It's not only our downtown mixed use, but it also has a tiny little bit of medium density residential, and it has a big chunk of high density residential. Okay, so the reason why it was done like that, I really don't know. I'm imagining, and based on what I'm deducing from some of other documents that I read, is that eventually Pleasant Grove was expecting to expand the downtown into right here. So I think that was the reason behind it. Maybe kind of like there was a master plan for the downtown. I had the chance to go over the downtown 2020 and some other plans. So eventually we were hoping to spill our uses into these areas. If we just take a look at this, that totally makes sense, because right here, the downtown mixed use is what constitutes our commercial subdistrict. And what we have around here, that's our transition subdistrict. You know, during the last planning commission, I learned that a lot of the public that we have here in Pleasant Grove think that transitional subdistrict means that you're poor and you buy a transition home to eventually go to a bigger home. But that's not that's not the meaning of it. The meaning is there's a transition or a buffer between commercial uses and single family dwellings. That's why it's the transitional part. Here's the map that we have. All this, everything in color, is our downtown village zone, and then again we have 2 sub-districts. This map tells us about the densities that are at this point, that are approved at this point. So if someone comes to me and says, hey Daniel, you know, I would like to develop right here some multifamily quadruplexes. No, you don't say quadruplexes, 4plexes, sorry. Quintuplex. Anyway, you got me. Anyway, so someone comes to me and says, hey Daniel, I would like to build some 4plexes, that will not be allowed. That will not be allowed, because in the transitional zone, we allow single family duplexes and triplexes. That's it. Okay, that's it. We have something similar right here in the downtown. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I would like to build a 4plex, the answer will be yes, but in order to do that, you have to develop also or build about 1,300 square feet of commercial. So that's kind of a little giveaway. So this map is just to give us the ideas how even within or within the zone, with the sub-districts that we have different densities. Okay, so that's what we have right now. If someone approaches me again, that's what's going to be given to the public. And I guess we were discussing that a little bit. The boundaries for that is this line right here. Okay, now I have one more. Okay, before I go there, let's take a look at this image again. So not only the densities are different between these 2 sub-districts, but the type of uses. We want, according to the general plan, we want retail and tons of commercial uses in this area. Now, commercial uses, as today, they're also allowed in here. Less intense uses, but some commercial uses are allowed. So what I did is I kind of drew a table. It doesn't have all and every single one of the uses, but it will give us a pretty good idea of what's allowed in each zone and what's not allowed in the other zone. Everything that is allowed in the transitional subdistrict is also allowed in the commercial. But what is allowed in the commercial is not allowed in the transitional, okay? For example, the commercial subdistrict uses allows for some residential hotels. That is not allowed in the transitional one. Retail, we expect to have a lot of retail, hopefully, here in the commercial subdistrict. So hotels right here, retail right here, restaurants, banks, service stations or gas stations, beauty and barber services, a gym, some wedding reception centers, commercial testing labs, miscellaneous small items repair. All that, it's allowed, right here. Everything here is also allowed right here. But these are the uses that are allowed in the transitional zone. Like I explained last time, there is some commercial. So someone comes to me right now, as it is, and says, hey, I would like to have a professional office in a lot. This tiny lot right here, for example. I would like to go with a professional office, and I'm going to go with some legal services. That will be allowed as a commercial use. So these are kind of like the uses. The more intense uses, actually, it pretty much covers all of them that are allowed in the transitional subdistrict. I've heard some kind of direction last time that maybe the idea is that we have too many commercial uses right here, but that's how it is right now. Okay.
So why?
Why?
Why transition?
So why do we need the transition zone?
So we don't. In reality, we don't need one at the time. I mean, a lot of cities don't have something like that, but the transition was from high density to so all this is just pure single family. Yes. Someone comes to me and says, hey, a triplex right here, the answer is no. So there's a transition, kind of like adjusting area, not just for the density, super high density, medium density, low density, but it's also a transition on the type of uses.
And when was that put into place, the transitional phase?
I think I read it in the general plan in 2011.
Okay.
I don't know if it was in the 2007. I mean, we amended the general plan in 2011, but
It was, I think it was 2011. I think we did some general plan work, and that was one of the outcomes, was to add that in.
So all the ideas on how we created the downtown zones came from a study that is called the RUDOT. We had a RUDOT study, and then we created a plan that it was Pleasant Grove 2020. It was super interesting to me to see the 2020 and see how close we are to it. And in some aspects, we're getting really close. Some other ones, we're way off. But it's interesting to see that. Based on that RUDOT study, which was done by a third party, some architects that came here and drew that RUDOT study, it was proposed to have that, the RUDOT study was done in 2006, and that was proposed to have a buffer zone, and it was reflected again when we created the general plan in 2011.
And so people know, the RUDOT study was a community. It wasn't just city staff sitting around talking.
Right.
It was,
And I
they brought in
understand that.
community and sought input, and that was one of the outcomes.
So I just, while we're talking about this, I just want to express this part. And I don't know what was happening down in the Grove area, the interchange district, but I love that we have this ability in Pleasant Grove to have a bedroom community up here. Mm-hmm. And I love that we have this business district to the west. I bought my home in 1991, and I just live 3 blocks east of here. I don't mind business area down here on Main Street and facing State Street, and but I know that my neighbors in my hood, they don't want a
Yeah, restaurants with
Yeah.
architectural standards are allowed in here. Kind of like what happened to that Thai restaurant when this was
But
created.
that's
yeah.
on a street. That's on a
Correct.
business street. It's facing a business street.
A heavy one, yeah, heavy transit one, yeah.
But right now, that could go across the street from me.
Yeah.
So-
Everyone in the yellow part.
Right.
Yep.
So that, hence my question of why, and does this still fit who we are right now? Anyway.
And that's my concern. I'm okay with the housing, the density ratios in the housing, but I'm not good with any of the commercial uses because I'm just picturing if I was a resident right there, would I want a doctor's office or a restaurant to come in across the street from me? When that's just not how it's been. And encroaching on those residential neighborhoods is a concern for me. So the housing component I'm okay with, but I'd like to have a further discussion about the commercial uses in the transitional zone.
Daniel, give us some thoughts. I know this has been before the Planning Commission on the transitional. Give us some thoughts where they're at.
Okay, before I answer that, I would like to chip in a little bit with Commissioner Anderson Council, I'm too familiar with the Planning Commission. But Council Anderson said, when the RUDOT study was created in 2006, the Grove, it wasn't planned as it is right now.
No.
It didn't even have the name of the Grove, it have a different name. It was
The Gateway.
the Gateway District, yeah, something like that. So that changed. This year is my goal to start a new general plan by the summer. Hopefully I can get it done by the winter. So we are changing that because when we create that general plan, that part wasn't even taught. So anyway, so that's something interesting. Yes, this has been discussed with the Planning Commission a lot. The Planning Commission, it's okay on how it is right now. Actually, that change, not just with the densities, but with the uses, it was driven by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is the one, we worked on this for about 3-4 months, and I brought this to the Planning Commission multiple times, and it was the idea to still have some commercial uses here and to reduce it to offices. Now, we're still open for discussion or anything like that.
See, and that's where I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect because I think we're the ones getting the direct concerns or complaints from the citizens about more high density and more encroachment in the neighborhoods, and maybe the planning commissioners aren't hearing that. And so I feel like we're kind of on different pages, and I don't know if we need to have kind of a meeting with I'm not saying that they need to come to where we're at, but I just feel like there's kind of a complete disconnect between our vision and their vision. And I'm trying to figure out where that is and why that is. But like I said, it could be that we're just getting the direct concerns from residents, and maybe they're not hearing those. So they're moving forward based on previous studies that at this point would be 12 years old. And I just don't know how I don't think we should agree on everything, but I feel like there's, in different areas of the city, we're really disconnected on a few things. And I'd like to be more on the same page.
Can I just address that? That's normal, I think, for
Is it?
cities, yeah. The Planning Commission, they're a recommending body, and you guys are the policymakers. And if they have a direction they want to go, they make a recommendation to you. But ultimately, you're the ones that are accountable to the people, and you make those decisions, what that's going to be. And so I think sometimes we look at it and be like, well, we all need to be together on this. Well, there's a reason why they're separate. There's a commission, and then there's a city council. And so it's a process that gets vetted. The commission's going to they're going to look at it deeply. They're going to make recommendations, but they are not elected, and they're not necessarily responsible to the people. They're appointed people. Ultimately, that decision rests with you.
I want to feel like they have a purpose, and sometimes when I feel like we go against the opposite of what they're doing, then I don't want them to feel like, why am I here if it's just going to go to the city council? That's why I'm wondering if there's a discussion that needs to be had, because I'd like to understand their reasoning on why they would like to see more commercial pushed back more into the neighborhoods, and maybe they should know kind of our reasoning. I just want to see I want to make sure they know they have a purpose, and that I understand they have a purpose instead of just voting against, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's like a
for
vote
sure.
against, but
They're probably just going off this plan.
On what's there, so.
Yeah, I don't think it's a disconnect. I think it's just, this is the plan,
Yes, they're
And so
following.
they're fulfilling that plan. If we as a body feel like that should not be a transitional sub-district, then we probably ought to talk through that.
Yes, so can we go back to them and say, we want you to look at this?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
you can bring us some recommendations and say, the council's really strong, I think, here with the, maybe changing that, so.
Yes, for sure.
Mayor, Tina suggested maybe a joint work session with them.
Yeah,
And I think that, I mean, to
yeah,
Sid's
we haven't
point, I
had one,
think that's
we've
good
not
to
had one
just.
since
We
I,
also have some new commissioners,
Yep.
and that would be helpful. I'd like to hear where they're coming from, because I want to make sure I understand, so it's not just so cut and dry, here's the council, here's the commission. If we can work together, I would like to do that, but that doesn't mean we're going to vote the same on everything.
Yep. But at least
But-
we're having the discussion face to
Correct.
face as opposed to,
Just
you do your
assuming,
thing and we'll
and-
do our thing.
yes,
So if
that's,
we're
yes.
having the face to face, that's helpful.
I would love that.
A joint meeting will be super helpful. Also, let's keep in mind that, so what they follow is this planning principles based on that plan that we have, the Pleasant Grove Downtown 2020. So maybe it's time also from the staff to receive some direction and say, you know what, it's time to create Pleasant Grove Downtown 2030. Or
Right.
something like that, and scrap that off and come up with
I
a new
love that
plan or
idea.
something
And that's a
like
good
that.
point, Daniel. Maybe they're just basing their information off of the master plan and the route out and everything that's come before. So that's a good point. Maybe it's just time for an update, and they're just basing their, information off.
Part of it, heavily, their decision is based on previous plans that we have done, yes.
So I remember, are you done, right? I remember going through all that and the planning. And I'm comfortable with the screen here, right?
Me
I
too.
just think, and we've got a major corridor going through here, First East, right? And that takes care of most of that,
I
and
agree.
about a half a block. So my big concern is just discussing the transitional, right? If we really need it or not, and.
But just let me see if I'm hearing correctly, just so I get it settled here. So we're okay how it is, the green one. We're also okay on the yellow one, on the portion for densities, but we're not okay on the intensity of uses allowed.
The
The commercial
commercial
uses.
retail version
Yeah.
of that.
I already taught some tools that we can apply to that. I don't know if we have time right now to do that.
do.
Someone else
I don't
can.
think we do, and I really think our next step is, we'll sit down as staff, but is probably to have a joint meeting,
so,
specifically on this.
And could we have a tour? Like, could we actually drive through?
That would be
yeah,
awesome.
we can go back there. I mean, that's,
It's just across
the street
from you, right?
thank you, Danny, and staff will plan us a joint meeting that we can, and so we'll,
Okay. I'll manage and schedule that joint meeting. Okay?
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
Tina had a comment
Well,
really quick.
I was just going to point out to the council that if you're going to do away with the transitional zone, your choice is either move all that yellow stuff into the downtown, the commercial, which means all of that can be more intense, or to move that yellow part into the residential, which means there's none. So you're either going to have to come up with a new transitional zone, a new buffer zone with different uses, or you're going to have to decide that area is going to go commercial or that area is going to go single family.
Got it.
Those are some of the tools that I thought about it, so we'll discuss them more lengthy when we
Okay,
meet.
we'll work on that in the future. We will now move on to our, and put forward our,
Well, if we're okay, we can adjourn.
we'll adjourn and we'll push the other
work session,
items to the back of our
issues We'll
council.
talk about in our council meeting.
So we're adjourned for 10 minutes here, and then we'll start our regular council meeting. Thank you.